I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny that when a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and a round thing in your face, you get sprung. Wanna pull up tough, cause you notice that butt was stuffed deep in the jeans she's wearing. I'm hooked and I can't stop staring. Oh baby, I wanna get whipped out and take your pick.
Do you like big walls? Then have I got some walls for you. Peru has a big wall made of stone. Pakistan has a big wall made of bricks. Iran once had a great big wall. But China has the biggest wall of them all. But those are ancient walls, tourist attractions. I want to talk about BMWs. Big modern walls. Let's start in 1945, the end of World War II, the start of the Cold War. When the Allied armies, Soviet, US, French, and British, conquered Nazi Germany, they divided it into 4 occupation zones. They also divided up Berlin, the most important German city. Germany became 2 separate countries, West Germany, a US-dominated capitalist country, and East Germany, a Soviet-dominated communist country, with divided Berlin in the middle of East Germany. Put another way, capitalist West Berlin was entirely surrounded by communist East Germany. This was a time of mass immigration, as many war refugees, including many Germans, fled from the Soviet zone to the west. They wanted to escape Soviet tyranny. They also knew that the Western Allies were wealthy and the Soviets were poor. My Polish friend, who survived the Holocaust and fled to West Germany, told me that they knew the USA must be the land of gold because US soldiers had toilet paper. To stop the mass exodus, the Soviets and their German allies put up fences between East and West Germany. In 1961, they built a wall entirely around West Berlin. Over 3 decades, at least 140 people died trying to cross the Berlin Wall, either shot down by guards or drowned in canals. Some 5,000 made it across, usually going from east to west, most hidden in cars or crawling through tunnels. Others swam, and some even made it by hot air balloon or airplane or tightrope. They were desperate to escape a police state where the government was spying and eavesdropping and keeping records on everybody. Whoops, this is the wrong slide. They were desperate to escape the East German police state, which was spying on everybody. For Western propagandists, the Berlin Wall symbolized capitalism versus communism, good versus evil. In 1946, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill came to the USA with a dire warning.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent.
President Truman also had a dire warning. At the present moment, he insisted, every nation must choose between alternative ways of life. One way of life, he said, was freedom. The other was terror and oppression.
The free peoples of the world look to us for support in maintaining their freedom.
In 1963, President Kennedy visited West Berlin. He toured the wall and gave a speech.
An offense not only against history, but an offense against humanity, separating families, dividing husbands and wives and brothers and sisters, and all free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
In 1987, it was President Reagan's turn to speak in West Berlin.
Yes, across Europe this wall will fall, for it cannot withstand faith, it cannot withstand truth. The wall cannot withstand freedom. And I would Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The British rock star David Bowie also went to the wall. U.S. propaganda said, walls are evil, the USA is the land of freedom where people can go where they want, and immigrants who fled communism were especially welcome. And then it happened, in 1989, one of the greatest moments of the 20th century. The people of Eastern Europe created a mass nonviolent movement against dictatorship. Czechoslovakia, Poland, Hungary, East Germany. When the soldiers refused to fire on their own people, the dictatorships were over. This mass nonviolence is known as people power. Berliners tore down the hated wall. Berlin was reunited, and a year later, Germany was reunited too. Fortunately, for you fans of big modern walls, there are still some nice ones to choose from. For example, the barrier between North and South Korea, called the demilitarized zone, one of the most militarized zones in the world. This barrier is mostly intended to keep North Koreans imprisoned in their miserable country and to keep U.S. invaders out. In Africa, the Moroccan military has created an enormous sand wall, along with the world's largest strip of landmines. This is part of its illegal occupation of the country of Western Sahara. And in Palestine, the Israeli military has been putting up enormous walls to imprison Palestinians and steal their land. I hope you like this big Israeli wall. You're paying for it. Speaking of paying for it, we currently have this: a malignant narcissist, a misogynistic, racist, pathological liar as U.S. president. To win votes, the misogynistic, racist liar promised to build a big modern wall between the USA and Mexico to keep immigrants out, a BMW that will cost U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars. But if government officials like these jokers really are serious about reducing immigration from Mexico, there is a method that would actually save taxpayers billions of dollars. Eliminate farm subsidies. I'll give you one example: corn. Each year, U.S. taxpayers give billions of dollars to U.S. corn producers. Who receives these welfare checks? Large corporations and wealthy agribusiness owners, among them 50 billionaires, including the Amway founder and the Walmart heirs. With government subsidies, they can sell the corn cheap and still make a profit. In fact, they export corn to Mexico and sell it well below cost. This has put many Mexican corn farmers out of business. You can guess where those Mexican corn farmers go. So one way to decrease Mexican immigration is to stop giving handouts to wealthy U.S. farm owners. There's another easy way. Prosecute the employers. A 1986 federal law made it illegal to hire undocumented workers, punishable by fines, loss of business license, even jail time, but it's poorly enforced. The Obama administration performed I-9 audits on only a few thousand companies and in 8 years arrested a total of 1,337 business managers on charges of illegal hiring, tax evasion, and money laundering related to employing unauthorized immigrants. At the same time, federal officials deported over 2.5 million people, more than any previous administration. But people will keep coming if employers keep hiring. Owners of restaurants, meatpacking plants, warehouses, landscaping services, construction companies, clothing factories, and agribusinesses hire undocumented workers to save money. They can pay them less than minimum wage, deprive them of other benefits, subject them to dangerous conditions, and abuse them because they know those workers are unlikely to report them. Congress doesn't want a serious crackdown because these employers, these disgusting exploiters, include their friends and big campaign donors. Like, for example, the misogynistic racist liar who, back in the 1980s, hired hundreds of unauthorized workers from Poland to demolish an historic building in New York City. He paid them $4 an hour and failed to provide proper safety equipment. The misogynistic racist liar wasn't prosecuted, of course, but the workers sued him and he paid a large settlement. The liar clearly isn't opposed to unauthorized workers in the USA. He simply discovered that the promise of a big wall appealed to a certain class of voters. Let's call them wall bangers. At his campaign rallies, the wall bangers chanted, "Build that wall." What's going on here? Why do these people who claim to love freedom get so aroused by the thought of a wall? I see three factors at work. The first is fear. The U.S. population is bombarded with messages of fear, and in times of crisis and fear, people easily become hostile to those they consider foreigners. The second factor is anger, expressed through scapegoating. The U.S. middle class has been in slow decline for the past 40 years, and it's a lot easier to blame immigration for taking our jobs, which is mostly nonsense, than to try to understand neoliberal economic policies that are threatening human existence. The third factor is hatred in the form of racism. Polls show that whites are divided on the wall issue, but blacks and Hispanics are overwhelmingly against it. They see it for what it is, a symbol of white supremacy. Cheering for a wall banging, is a way to express white supremacist attitudes without saying something overtly racist. You can let the misogynistic racist liar do that for you. So the message has changed since the 1980s. Rather than appealing to the best in U.S. citizens, the propaganda now appeals to the worst. Walls are now good. A surveillance state is good. And immigrants are bad. But the misogynistic, racist, lying wallbanger has a problem. He wants the wall built for his ego, for his racist wall-banging supporters. But the people he works for, the capitalists, may object. They want people crossing the border. They want the cheap labor. To be more precise, they want a workforce that is poor, uneducated, politically powerless, and scared, like slavery without the auctions. In fact, when they can't find enough unauthorized immigrants to harvest their crops, U.S. agribusinesses turn to convict labor, which is even more like slavery. We also have this, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also called ICE, because they can be cold-blooded. Recently, they arrested this man, a chemistry professor and hospital technician who has lived in the USA for 30 years. And this physician, who has lived here 40 years, having left Poland when it was still behind the Iron Curtain. When they're not arresting doctors, they are arresting patients in hospitals, like this woman who was awaiting surgery for a brain tumor. And this girl, who has cerebral palsy and was recovering from gallbladder surgery. And they harassed this boy in intensive care. All of this for minor law violations, all threatened with deportation. Why terrorize these people? To keep immigrants scared and to appease the fearful, angry, racist wallbangers. Maybe now is a good time to ask yourself, what kind of country do I want to live in? And more important, how shall I treat others? Regarding the girl with cerebral palsy, this ICE agent explained, by law, we have to do exactly what we did. By law. Reminds me of the Bible story about a foreigner who stopped to help a stranger. Two churchmen had not stopped to help. Why not? By law, They were supposed to remain clean, not get themselves contaminated. Are you familiar with this parable of the Good Samaritan? I'll conclude this lecture with Martin Luther King speaking about this parable during a sanitation workers' strike in Memphis.
Was still around. Or it's possible that they felt that the man on the ground was merely faking. And he was acting like he had been robbed and hurt in order to seize them over there, lure them there for quick and easy seizure. And so the first question that the priest asked, the first question that the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then the Good Samaritan came by, and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? That's the question before you tonight. Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to my job? Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to all of the hours that I usually spend in my office every day and every week as a pastor? The question is not if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? The question is, if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? That's the question. Let us rise up tonight with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination, and let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you.